All right, so it's the rundown. We're covering a re-listen of the best episodes of the Kirk Minihane show, and we're going to cover the 628 show. That was really, really good for a lot of different reasons. But before we get to that, we are going to do the Mike and Big Cat episode from KMS today, and talk through that and get our first impressions of it. So we've got the executive producer for what is formerly known as Menors Live. He's now retired or fired or let go. We got Visionless Dave here. We've got 860. You're up as well. Chris, how are you?
What's going on, man?
It's good to have you. And then, of course, we've got my good friend Ziggy, Turtle Boy. You know,
that was the joke that you said you were gonna.
No, I'm saying
that's good. No, it's fine.
Think, well, if you let me finish, I'm saying Ziggy / Turtle Boy / Joe Henny. I don't know. You have many different opinions, sure. So we'll get there. But Zigster, I want to put this off to you and get your first impressions of the Mike and Big Cat episode from today, because I know you were a big fan of having Mike or Steve doing episodes. So this was your time to shine, man. This was great. What did you think?
Sure. I mean, at this point, I think I don't even need to say that you're putting words into my mouth. It's just so obvious. So we'll just all jokes that you make about Turtle Boy, me agreeing with him, I'm just going to let it slide.
You guys are in lockstep, man. There's nothing wrong with that.
Keep it going. Let's just be professional and get this show done.
Okay, all right, okay.
A lot of tension in the air.
I enjoyed the show. I mean, I don't think anyone would not enjoy something with Big Cat. He's obviously a rare talent. It was nice to hear him like explicitly say, "I'm a legitimate fan of the show," because you could tell he is. He's not just saying that. I'm sure he doesn't listen to every single minute of all the episodes, but he was the one that asked for the timestamp, so I'm sure he's going through, and that probably made me feel better than I care to admit that he likes the Kirk Minihane show. I did think Mike was prepared for the show, which was good. It had at times kind of a feel of an interview, but that was fine because Big Cat's kind of on the receiving end. It's going to be good. And yeah, I think I enjoyed it. It was a good hour of content for me today.
Oh, I loved it in a way because it just gave us something to listen to. We've been dying for that daily podcast to have something. So when I was going through Twitter, Discord, and Reddit, the feedback was not great when it came to Mike. And I know, Chris, you're active on the Discord. Did Mike do a good job? Good day, bad day? What the hell is going on there, man?
I'm not a fan of interviews, the interview type sounding, but it was all right. I didn't agree with him saying that they should do 2-hour shows once a week, maybe an hour, but honestly, I think 2 hours is too long. I don't think Mike and Steve can come up with enough interesting content for 2 hours, even once a week. I just don't think that would work, but I don't know. It was all right. It was good to have a real show again, but like I said, not a big fan of the interview type, and that's what it felt like with Mike, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, I was going to say, VD, it felt like, I don't know what your impression was, but it felt like, and maybe it was similar to what we would do as fans of Big Cat. Like, it just felt like, and Mike's a Minifan, and so it just felt like a Minifan was interviewing Big Cat. You know what I mean?
Mike said he's not a Minifan for the record.
That is true.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get to that later.
We can get into that later. Good tease. But yeah, I mean, the episode is exactly what you think it was going to be. Like, you know what you're going to get from Big Cat. He's like a likable, fun dude. He obviously likes the show, which I agree with Ziggy. Like, I don't know why it makes me feel happy about that. It shouldn't. It's a little weird to admit, but it does feel good to have like a powerful ally inside Barstool. And like, if you've ever listened to the Yak or to Part of My Take, you knew exactly what you were going to get from Big Cat. I didn't really expect anything from Mike, but I think the bigger discussion kind of goes back to last week, talking about, should stuff be on the RSS feed? And I think if Kirk is cool with it, which he obviously is, then yeah, Mike and Steve should definitely be pulling something together, whether it's a 1-hour show a week with a guest they pull in, or, personally, originally I wasn't too keen on the RSS feed idea because I do think it's sacred, but I also think that's because I'm tapped into the YouTube, so it doesn't matter to me if it goes on the YouTube, but I understand the value of it going on the RSS feed. And, people can complain about the quality of the product Mike puts out. I'm one of them, but I do think that something is better than nothing now, and he really has nothing to lose. Like, go cash in your favors. Ask Big Cat, get Cullinane on there for an episode. Get Steve from Providence on there. Like, there's funny people in this world that want to help get content out now. So I thought it was interesting. It'll be interesting to see how he follows it up, if that's kind of a one and done, or if he's going to keep trying to pull stuff together for the RSS feed.
Yeah. Do you think, Ziggy, that, like when Mike and Steve did their update for 11 minutes, like it just seemed like Steve was so uncomfortable with it. And maybe it was just the freshness of what Kirk was going through. But that 11 minutes was a chore for Steve to get through. And you and Turtle Boy and others have asked for more. So do you think this is a good thing going forward? Do you think once a week is good? 2 hours? Like I
don't see the point in setting a hard limit on it and just say once a week. If Mike and or Steve, I guess, but I mean Mike, I guess, is technically the content guy, second to Kirk, obviously. If Mike has content ideas, he should be pumping them out. What kind of annoyed me on the show with Big Cat is Mike said, "Oh, I do these YouTube shows. They're kind of stupid shows. Why would you do a stupid show, like a show that you're not putting much thought into? You should be doing a show that people want to listen to and what the fans want to hear." And if he doesn't know what the fans want to hear, because he's not a Minihane apparently, he can ask them. They could send out a Survey Monkey questionnaire on the email list. Like, there's plenty of things they could do to find out what the fans want to hear. But it's just frustrating that they're not. It doesn't seem like there's a fire under them to really churn out content, which I think we always want to hear. Obviously, it's not going to be Kirk Minihane show. We don't want watered down Kirk Minihane show, but I think the fans want content.
That's a straw man argument, that watered down Kirk Minihane show argument, because nobody is asking for that. And like Mike in this situation, if you look at it as far as like a career opportunity for him, like being a third guy on this podcast is a great opportunity for him. But then, okay, you have an indefinite amount of time where that RSS feed is your baby, and you can throw stuff out there, and you can really, take pride in your work, and, get Big Cat on. I wouldn't even be surprised if he could get Portnoy to call in, given like the situation, just anything. Like, he needs to be cashing in all his favors, listening to all suggestions. If he doesn't have ideas of his own, he needs to be listening to all suggestions. And I don't know, he just needs to be going for it.
Could it be, though, from not knowing if Kirk wants them to be on the RSS feed? If they really haven't talked to him, they don't know what he wants, so that's why
I think early that was the case, but it looks like they've gotten the green light from Kirk. I know he's mentioned in the past, I can't find the clip of it, but I know he's mentioned in the past when he was gone, like, he doesn't give a shit about the RSS feed, do what you want. And last time when he came back in March, he buried Mike for just doing a couple shitty YouTube shows, so... To me, like, thinking about how Kirk thinks, trying to envision what he would say, he's never going to get mad at Mike for doing too much. Like, that's just a situation that has never happened. So I think Mike, he really has nothing to lose. Like, go for it.
Right. John, I think John wanted to pop in on this and have a comment as well. John, are you there? John from Scranton.
John's always here. It's the YouTube.
I mean, yeah.
Show.
No, I guess not. I thought he would. I guess not. The tramp of the YouTube. I thought he would be in here, but I guess not. Okay, so
yeah. Well, I do have another point.
Please.
So, Mike and Big Cat, they talked about the YouTube shows or the RSS feed, but the other bigger thing that I think Big Cat hit on was, and he didn't specifically say this to Mike, but it was pretty clear he was talking to Mike and probably Steve. He kept talking about how important it is to be constantly in touch with the fans, especially like if you're not if the main show is not going on. He kept hammering it down, like, make sure they feel in the loop, and that's something that the fans have been kind of complaining about, and Mike's heard those complaints. But I think when Big Cat's telling you to do it, like, first off, don't mute people on Twitter, unmute everyone and get everyone involved and make us feel like we're one kind of cohesive group. I don't know.
And for the people that aren't on Twitter or YouTube that
absolutely
have no idea what the fuck's going on.
Yep.
They don't know anything.
Yeah, there's got to be a large group that are just podcast listeners, just RSS feed listeners. So, like, I can't imagine what they're thinking right now. Like, they're not getting much, if at all. But that's crazy to me that they're not even on social media. At least be in Facebook. You know what I mean? But
see, the cloud signal's gone out. I think John wants in.
John, can you hear us?
I officially deem Barstool Big Cat the king of the Mancels. KFC, not a fan.
Done?
KFC's out.
KFC's not a fan, bro. I just want to pop in here. I want this debate to get going because I don't think it's like, why does Kevin get this? Like, is it just because him and Kirk like talk, like they text?
I will say this.
Why does
KFC,
he get a pass? Because like, yo, he's like, I know like he's always got Minifans backed, but like, yo, Big Cat's a legit fan. Like he
actually
listens.
Yes.
Big
I don't know
Cat's
if
a
you guys were
fan,
talking.
but KFC I think is more like one of us. Like he's more of a shithead. He's
But I
more of
don't
a
know
troll.
if he is, man.
I think he is. Like even, I mean, this is gonna go down a whole KFC
he's
rabbit
more
hole.
like
but
us,
Yes.
where like I think he can take a joke and he can play along with the joke and joke
Yes.
you where you don't know it's a joke. Like that's
Yeah.
good. That's someone who plays along.
That's
good.
my big
But
point.
like Big Cat's a fucking fan, dude. Like where he listens every day. He was in on the jokes. Like I don't know what you guys are talking about, but I'm saying like he was fucking like enveloped in the whole conversation today. Like he was the stuff. Like Mike was giving Barstool Big Cat a fucking Barstool interview, and Big Cat wanted to talk KMS World. And it was
and he can sit in there like during Super Bowl week, and he can sit there for 3
like,
hours, and he can be comfortable where KFC is kind of like he needs to get out of there because he can only sit
he's
there.
He's a fucking politics guy, right? He's a politics guy, and he's our leader. I officially deem KFC out.
All right, well, Big Cat's in. I mean, he's a deadhead, so he's right up my alley right there.
I've actually tried to do this on Twitter about 3 months ago. It didn't work. So let's take two.
All right, let's go. All right, Chris, anything else on the show today before we actually get into the re-listen? I'm going to give you the last word here.
To go back off what I think it was Ziggy that said it. I think that Mike, when he was talking about the YouTube shows being shitty YouTube shows, I think it's just his confidence. He just has no confidence. He's with a big name from Barstool, and he didn't want to. I guess he doesn't have the confidence to say that. Talk about his YouTube shows without putting that in that they were shitty.
I think that's a good point.
That's a good point, but Big Cat is also the least intimidating person of all time.
But it's just that, like I said, the confidence level.
I feel you.
Just him talking to a big name. He's kind of in his place. So.
One more thing I will add, I've seen bubbling up on Twitter is like a lot of people saying, why hasn't Steve done any content? And as the Steve defender guy, I think it's important to remember that, like, yes, he's filled in for Howie, but he's a producer. Like, he's not paid. Like, he knows he can't get on the mic for an hour and just keep us entertained. Like, everything funny about Steve is like playing off Kirk and kind of, you know,
what Kirk gets out of him.
He's not a one-man show. So everyone just, you know, keep that in mind before you slander Big Steve.
Well, yeah, if I can, he's a really nice guy. He's a really nice guy. But Steve and Mike too, they're both hangers on, and they shouldn't be doing a show together.
How do you spell
hanger? It's kind of what I got to there, VD. I think they shouldn't be doing a show. They are hangers on. Kirk, he gets the most he can out of them. He's a content creator, and those guys are really nice guys, and that's the bottom line.
I'm saying hour a week, maybe. That's what I'm saying.
To Big Cat's point, which I think Big Cat stole this point from me when he listened to the rundown last week. If Mike and Steve did a show together, I'm not saying they should, but if they did, it would be perfect fodder for Kirk to make fun of.
Absolutely.
When they came back. Yeah. So I know there's just so much. I'm repeating myself, but what is the downside of throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks?
Right.
I do think Steve is afraid to kind of look dumb and have audio out there of him and Mike riffing. So when he does go for future jobs, that audio he would have to try and scrub somehow. But I think maybe he's just afraid of being criticized by Kirk or mocked by the fans.
I just imagine the moments when Kirk goes to take a piss or something, and how awkward it is listening to them two by themselves. Like they both just like they don't know what to say.
I mean, they struggled to get
that
through that
for an hour or two. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, they struggled to get through that 12-minute update, and they had half of it was just telling news. So I feel you on that.
Yep, that's fair.
I don't care. Like, I understand it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If you don't want to talk about it, you don't want to talk about it. I don't like the fact that it's happening, though.
Yeah.
So what's going to be next? Steve will say right now, nothing. Oh, no, nothing. Everything else on the table. But then 3 weeks from now, he's going to say, I don't really want you to say that about...
Or if you ask about his wife after the honeymoon, something like that. You know what I mean?
Shit like that. But that'll probably be fine. But something down the line, he's going to text me and say, well... You know, the show's pretty good today, but I talked to Ben, And I think maybe next time in the hour number 2, maybe we should do this instead. Ben didn't think that was funny. You
That's
know,
not going to happen.
This fucking, like I'm dealing with Ben, this fucking drip accountant who's fucking now programming my show.
No, it's not
That's
gonna
my
happen.
issue.
I mean, going
How do you
forward-
know that? How do you know
Because
that?
going
It's already
forward-
happened once in 2 weeks.
I'll take the blind mic route and I'll just lie.
Well,
You know,
fine.
it was bad on me for actually answering the questions and trying to be an honest
Well,
participant in the
I
show.
guarantee you, if we had a transcript of that phone call, if we heard that phone call, Steve fucking buried me in that phone call.
What do I lie
Garen
about?
Did
fucking
not.
teed.
Absolutely
Garen
did
fucking
not.
teed.
Absolutely did not. I praised
Guaranteed.
him.
Guaranteed.
He told
Guaranteed.
me I don't like the show. I don't like Kirk. I think he treats you like an asshole. And I told him, you know what? You're hearing something on the show, but Kirk.
He doesn't like me. He doesn't like the show.
Kirk has praised
Well,
me
fuck
more.
him, then.
Kirk has
Fuck
praised
him.
me more in 2 weeks than I have in the
Fuck
last
him.
like 5
Fuck
years.
him. Fuck him. Fuck him. I fucking hate him. Fuck him. I hate the show. I hate you. Fuck him. What is he? What show does he like?
I don't
Get him
know.
on. Get that fucking drip on. That's fine by me. I don't care. Jesus Christ, I hope he gets deployed tomorrow. Tomorrow. I do. It gets in the way of my fucking show. No, I hope he doesn't get hurt. But I hope he goes over there and it's 140 degrees and he has to fucking eat that shitty food and sit around for 9 years. Is he married?
Yes.
Does he have kids?
Yes.
Fuck his kids too.
Oh, come on,
What?
man.
Fuck them. What do you want me to say? Their future generations will get in the way and be like, what's their name? Is that the kids you have on the phone?
No.
Okay. What are their names?
Dennis, Kaylin, and
Steve doesn't even want to say their
Marianne.
names. Doesn't even want to say their names. Doesn't even want to say their names.
I'm
He's
doing
so-
the blind
so
mic.
paralyzed by
You're fine-
fucking.
You're fine
so
with blind
paralyzed-
Mike
What
lying
is-
that he
what
doesn't
is-
even know
I
where
don't
his
get this.
fucking
Where?
dad
Why am I?
works.
Where does he
liar?
lie? What does he
Where
lie
am I
about?
lying?
That you don't know where your dad works or anything like that?
I don't know where he works. That's not. That. What do you want me to say?
Well, did Mike text me yesterday and say, "Hey, just a heads up. I talked. What's your brother's name? Mike.
My brother Anthony.
Yeah, I talked to Tony yesterday, and he didn't really like that segment. He thinks the show stinks.
All right, so we've got the first moment in the Kirk Minihane show that really felt like the Kirk Minihane show with the Kirk versus Steve, the tension in the room, where it really felt like everything that Kirk was bringing from EEI, the inside show stuff, the tension, bringing everything onto the air. It was even a moment I enjoyed where actually Mike could get out there, and actually it was the first time where he felt comfortable saying some things. I think it was 10 days into the show's history. I loved it, especially being a Steve hater. Now it was great to hear him squirm, even on this. I think probably I listened to this 10 times. It was 6 to midnight for me. Chris, what was it like for you, man?
Well, I have one takeaway. That they both looked like shit through the whole thing because
Both Kirk and Steve look like shit?
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm talking about Mike and Steve, but no,
Mike and
Kirk
Steve.
and
Oh,
Steve,
please.
no, but Kirk and Steve still too because Kirk, I can understand why he didn't want Ben running his show. Completely understand. I thought it was hilarious. I loved how he was saying "fuck his kids" too, and then saying, "What am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to say?" That had me fucking cracking up. But no, I think that I don't know. I think Kirk overreacted. It was good content. It was awesome. I was cracking up the whole time. But I think that basically, who the fuck cares about what his brother said? And he also had talked about how if you just told me off the air, it wouldn't be a big deal. But Steve did talk to him off the air about it, and he brought it on to the air, and then it was a big deal all of a sudden. So I was confused on what exactly Kirk was mad about with Steve. And I don't know. That I've been wondering that for a while. Was if he kept on saying, if you just told me off the air, I'm not going to be mad. But I think that's what he had said. And then he did say it off the air, and he was still pissed.
Yeah.
So what exactly was the real issue with it?
So my biggest thing is I'm biased. I'm a Steve hater. I will hate him for all time. So I'm listening to it and I'm like, wow, Steve is uncomfortable. He's being a little bitch about this. He's dodging every question. He won't talk about what Ben actually said, this and that. VD, you are one Steve supporter on the show right now. I mean, how do you support your boy?
Yeah, I mean, if you like uncomfortable radio, this was it.
Yes.
Both starting with this audio and then kind of it moves into Blind Mike's stand up. But yeah, this was. I still was getting to know Kirk at this point. I kind of had heard, the rumblings of like, oh yeah, this guy's like a real attack dog or whatever. He likes uncomfortable radio, and then hearing Steve squirm, I think it was a big wake up call for Steve. Perhaps his welcome to the big leagues moment. I think,
Hey.
the idea of the show probably seemed fun to him going into it. He's like, yeah, we're going to go after people and yeah, we'll bust each other's balls. And then this was his first time kind of staring down the barrel, and you could tell he was shook. He was definitely shook. And I don't even think there's it's worth debating, whether Steve is right or wrong for asking that, because that's not even really what it's about. I just imagine Kirk getting that text at like 4 p.m. and instantly just being like, fuck yeah, I got him right where I want him, and then just proceeding to like, toy with him like my cat plays with like a dead mouse. Once the mouse dies, he keeps just swatting it around, and that's pretty much what it was like. And Steve just kept digging himself like a little bit deeper into mini holes as Kirk kept applying pressure. It's just it's a thing of beauty.
But see, I thought that Mike. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. My fault.
No, I was just saying how uncomfortable Steve was, and the fact that he seemed shocked that Kirk would do this, yet he claims that he listened to Kirk's show on EEI. Like, there's just no way. Like, everybody else who would listen to Kirk on EEI knew this was coming. He would shit on producers all the time. So there's just so many lies, little lies wrapped in there on this re-listen. It was perfect for me, Chris. I loved it, man.
But I think Mike also kind of looked like shit too, because before it all had started, Mike had said, and I quote, "Just do like me and pretend that you don't know anything." And when shit got hot, Steve started going back to Mike and saying, you don't have a problem with him saying he doesn't know where his dad works. And then Mike was saying, "What do you like? They kept on saying, well, how am I a liar about it?" And I don't think he actually remembered that he said, "Just act like me, pretend like you don't know." So it made Mike kind of look like shit with it.
Oh, he got so defensive. Ziggy, you must have been so excited, man. Go, man. Just go.
Well, yeah. So when this is one of those moments where it's like I remember exactly where I was when I was listening, and when Kirk said like, "Oh, I hope he gets deployed," I remember like a solid couple fist pumps because that's when you knew that Kirk was like, we're getting real unfiltered Kirk here, where he's not bringing us anything back. I mean, this is only 2 weeks into the show. VD said that. VD, you said that you think that Kirk, when he got the text, knew that he had Steve. I thought that Kirk came into it pretty level-headed, but then Steve was defending himself and was being all dodgy, and that's when Kirk really amped it up and got angry. He was just annoyed at first, and then he just got angry. And then Steve, what's so great is, in Sorry Warden of the North, I'm not saying Steve is great, but what is so great about Steve is that he can be dodgy in arguments, and then Kirk, it just brings out his like ability to sniff that out and shut it right down. So Steve went from saying it was a family intervention, then later said that it was just Ben that talked to him. Right. Steve said that after saying that it was Ben that brought it up, he said it was actually himself that had the problem with it. Steve said first his entire family was off limits. Then he said, no, it's just my parents. So yeah, he was all over the place. But then the best part was when Kirk realized that he had an enemy in Ben Robinson. Like Kirk is the best when he has an enemy. I think especially when it's almost someone non-tangible or intangible. And once he started getting those details on Ben, it was just perfect. And even at one point, Steve was like, "Oh, I think you would like Ben," and that just really set Kirk. He just went off from there. So yeah, it was just such a great segment.
It was, and you hear his quote in there. The thing that stuck out to me, Steve said, "Doesn't see the value in rehashing this for the listeners," and that immediately set Kirk off. Like, who the fuck are you to tell me as a producer what's the value for listeners? What the hell are you talking about? Like, I was so happy to hear this now. When I heard it the first time, I was not a Steve hater because, like you said, it was 10 days into the show. But this is all going down 10 days in, and then Steve's gone for 3 weeks, and we get the greatest era of the show in the Cullinane era. But, I mean, like, this was fantastic for everybody now to listen to as a Steve hater especially, but just to hear the uncomfortableness, but then also – what it is now to see the growth from then to now. I'll give Steve credit. Like, there's no way this goes down now compared to then. Steve is he's grown so much. Mike, I think, has shown some growth in that too, where he's a little bit more comfortable. So this probably doesn't go down the same way. But goddamn, man, this was the first moment, because I don't know if you guys remember, but Kirk was even, you could hear a little nervousness in the first show. Little nervous energy in the room, him and Steve working together. Mike wasn't there every day. So this was felt like the show. This was it. I wouldn't even do a re-listen on the first show of the KMS. This to me is the first show of the season.
What moment made you become a Steve hater? I don't think I've ever heard this story. I know I've always wondered.
Oh, for me, it's just the many, many lies that Steve has told about me on the show and how casual he is with those lies. I don't know what it was like for Ziggy. No, there's no
allegedly.
There's no alleged here. I don't know what it was like for Ziggy, but I was a hater then.
Yeah, I don't know when it turned to hate for me, or as I've said before, when I got my full on Steve derangement syndrome.
Yes.
But I have text messages to a buddy of mine who listens on day one of the show saying Steve talks too much. He's trying to turn this into a politics show. He made a Freudian slip on episode 1, not calling it Barstool Sports, but calling it Barstool Politics. And right from there, I was like, he's got a mission, and I guess I'd say that's when I started hating him. Once I realized he wasn't who Kirk thought he was. But I mean, it's turned out great because Kirk can make something out of nothing.
Yeah, that's the beauty of Kirk. He can just mold. He makes people interesting. He can kind of steer them in a way that's interesting. And this was like the first time in the show where, for me, I got to really see like, okay, this guy is like really talented at, making good content, making good radio, pulling the best out of people, and making things that shouldn't be interesting, just like these hugely interesting things.
Did you guys hear in the show? It seemed like Kirk kept calling Steve and Ben the Roberts.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, that wasn't just me. So I don't know if he was doing that on purpose.
I think that was just blind rage from Kirk.
Yeah. That drip accountant who fuck his kids and get him.
The fuck his kids was like one of the best lines.
What do you want me to do? What?
Yeah.
I love
fuck
that.
his kids.
What do you want me to say?
Yeah.
So I think we're missing the tail end of this story. So we know that there was the argument between them because Steve brought this up. But who wants to fill in the blanks of the other half of the scrubbed audio?
Scoops,
right?
Scoops.
So here's what we know, right? So I mean, as everyone knows, that I think it was late February. Menners was trying to get some details on Steve's family history that he mentioned early on in the show, which is what was brought up in this episode. Early Kirk Min, credit to him for DMing Kirk and telling him, hey, I can't find this audio. I think something happened. Kirk comes in, we get a 30-minute show. He suspends Steve. So here's the facts, right? So June 28th, it's a Friday. That's the day that this argument takes place. Steve said that, or rather, Kirk said that Steve texted him the day before. So Thursday at 3 p.m., Kirk gets the text from Steve. Steve in the text said, I just got a nice intervention phone call from my family, implying that Thursday afternoon, we know Ben Robinson called him, right?
Right.
And on that recap show, Steve said, I think somewhere in the week before the argument is when I deleted the audio. Okay. So to recap, Steve deleted the audio before this argument took place, right? Steve got the call Thursday afternoon from Ben. He texted Kirk at 3. Argument happened on Friday. Okay. Yes. Everyone with me so far?
With you so far. This feels like JFK right now. Tell me when it goes back.
This feels like a Ziggy Robinson exclusive.
This does, yes, please.
So either Steve deleted the audio Thursday night after getting the call from Ben and texting Kirk, right? Or he deleted it before getting the call from Ben, right? Those are the two options in that week timeline. Either deleted it after or before. So if you believe that he deleted the audio Thursday night after texting Kirk, then what you're choosing to believe is that Steve withheld that information, that he scrubbed the audio throughout that whole 30-minute argument on Friday, which is a pretty wild thing to do. Like knowing that you actually scrubbed the audio, knowing someone could find that. And if that happened at the time, he probably would have been fired after that blow up on Friday.
Absolutely.
But the alternative is if you believe Steve deleted the audio before their call on Friday, or on the text, or rather, if he deleted the audio before he got the call from Ben, right? Then that means that Ben heard the scrubbed podcast and would not have known that his parents were discussed.
And there's no way that would happen.
There's no way that would happen, which means I don't think Ben reached out to Steve. I think Steve deleted the audio and then got scared and realized someone's going to find this. So I need to protect myself. I'm going to use my brother, who Kirk doesn't know about.
Yes.
Who's with
might have sniffed that out at the time too, because he was saying that. Because he was saying,
he was on it, and that's why
really call.
That's why Steve was so dodgy. He couldn't nail down any facts about what happened.
Yes,
so it was a clear cover up.
Ben Robinson might not even exist.
That's true. Ziggy, I like the investigative work, but
what say you, VD? What say you?
Is it not possible that like the day after they had talked to his parents, Ben called him and called Steve and kind of expressed displeasure, or a couple days after that. And Steve just kind of kept that, like sat on that for a while. And then maybe Ben reached out again. Like, I agree with you. There's some inconsistencies there, but isn't it possible that it
But in
wasn't
that
just a
timeline,
one-time
when did he delete the audio in that timeline?
I think it was deleted before the show. I really do. And I think he's that much of a psycho that he would sit there and not say anything.
So you think he deleted it after he texted Kirk, but before the show?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. And as
He
you know,
went away. He went away on a 3-week jaunt with his wife for their honeymoon. So you're telling me, VD, that we could have had a Dave Cullinane full-time producer.
Yeah.
He could have been Steveless if we had just found out this information beforehand.
it's really on us for not re-listening.
It's
We're
really
not listening and finding the scrubbed audio, I guess.
I feel terrible. As a Cullinane guy, this could have been epic for us. We would have been Steveless. This is shit.
I don't like to hear that. I don't like to hear that.
I mean, I would never make an accusation against Steve based on circumstantial evidence that
No,
some would say was completely
course not.
fabricated.
I
Storyline. I would never do that. I would never.
No. No, you know what I appreciate, and I think Kirk would appreciate this too, with everything else going on with Kirk, where he's at right now. He would love this the most. I think this would uplift him a little bit of controversy, a little bit of breaking news, a little bit of investigative journalism by the Zigster. I'm excited. Chris, what are you thinking right now, man? I'm gonna give you the last words on this.
I might be sold. I like that idea.
Are you a Steve hater, Chris? Are you?
I'm not a Steve hater. I mean, I think he's the most interesting man in the world, but also the weirdest man in the world. I'm definitely not a hater, but I don't know. You might have me on here. I just don't know if there's too many people that would have. How did no one notice that?
This is the magic bullet right here.
I don't know.
This is back to the left. Is what
the only way that the House of Cards falls apart is if what the facts that we know were just lies from Steve, which is obviously possible. Obviously, he could have lied about any of those facts, which would just kind of destroy the whole thing. So there's always that to fall back on.
Yes, and it is. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
It is worth noting, and this doesn't look good for my guy, Steve. I did reach out for a comment to include in this episode, and he did not respond. So
there's a no comment. Okay.
No comment. There's a no comment.
So there's a no comment from Steve right there. This is damning evidence right
I'm just imagining if after all this we find out that Ben Robinson was never even a real person, no brother, never even had a brother.
I'm surprised Ziggy hasn't been, Facebook DMing him. That's usually right in his wheelhouse.
I keep my sources close to the vest.
Right. And I've lived in Maine my entire life. I was at the Saco shows for 2 nights because I'm a real fan. And I'll tell you, I never saw Ben Robinson anywhere. So
that's true.
There's no, and he wasn't at Madawaska either. So who is Ben Robinson? I don't think he even exists. But it's the little lies.
Robertson.
The little lies when Steve lies about everything. So everything is a lie. So you can't pin him down on anything.
I did love
weasel words.
I did love Steve trying to improvise names for his niece or kids. It was just so unnatural.
I'll just lie. I'll go to the blind man.
Oh, I forgot to say, I do agree with 860, where Blind Mike came out like shit during that segment.
Oh, he got very sensitive.
He literally said, "Just lie, just do what I do and lie." Yep. And then 3 minutes later, he's like, well, when did I become a liar?
I don't know. How am I a liar? Yeah.
I'm glad I listened to it again because I never noticed that until I listened to it again. And I was like, holy shit.
And Kirk gave him a nice, shut the fuck up right now, Mike. Yep. And then I like later when Mike he tries to bring it back up again. And Kirk's like, all right, Mike, save it for your show. And then he's like, actually, you know what, Mike? I got your back on this.
I got your back on this.
But it was classic pile on Mike. When Kirk starts going at Steve, Mike's the first one to jump on board,
Oh, so good.
Hey, it saved Mike though in the end for the end of the show.
True.
Stand up because it saved him big time having that to use for his jokes.
All right, you have to be. This is real. There may be somebody who watches this on YouTube and says this guy is the future of comedy.
Do I have to stand up too?
You have to stand up. All right. Red 13 Studios in Framingham proudly brings you the comedic stylings of Mr. Michael Geary. Blind Mike, go ahead, please.
Good morning, everybody. Good to hear all of you today. I wanted to bring notes for this, but They said the room was too hot for the projector. For those of you that don't know, I'm legal. For those of you that don't know, I'm legally blind, and when people find that out, the first question they ask is not how does it impact your life or how does it affect your relationships. It's why don't you just get glasses? So it's good to know that at first glance, people don't assume I'm handicapped; they just think I'm an idiot. It was tough growing up. It was tough. It was tough growing up, being legally blind, especially because my dad.
Hey, you suck! You suck! You blind fuck! You suck!
Hey, I don't come to your job and tell you can't talk about my parents.
There you go.
It was tough growing up being legally blind, especially because my dad wasn't around a ton, and people think it's weird. I was so distant from my dad that I didn't even know what he did for a living, and it turns out I didn't know what he did because he was a mime. A mime, I say, because I wrote that joke in 1946 when mimes existed. Steve Robinson is here, everybody. That's what's giving this room the vibe of a Proud Boys rally. And a lot of people have been critical of Steve's work on the show, and I think that's ridiculous. I think Steve has done an excellent job. And the thing that's impressed me most about Steve is that he's able to laugh at all of Kirk's jokes with Ben's dick in his mouth. And
Well, that's improv right there.
And Kirk Minihane is also here, of course, and everyone knows Kirk gives me a hard time about a lot of things, particularly about being blind, and that's fine. I take it all in good spirits. But Kirk and I do have one thing in common, and that's that neither of us can see our parents. Thank you, everybody. You've been great.
All right, so we've got what I think was probably amazing for Blind Mike, in that it was his best comedy performance. It was 10 days into the show, and after listening to him at Saco for 2 nights doing stand-up comedy, he has regressed as a comedian. He was fantastic for a 2 or 3 minute spot where he had his ability to improv and bounce off some Ben Robinson stuff and get Kirk howling laughing. I loved to hear it in the first listen. It was good to hear something good about Mike, because it's been tough to hear some good things about Mike. But Ziggy, as a huge Mike fan that you are, I mean, how was this on the re-listen, my man?
So I remember at the time being impressed with the stand-up, because you could tell how nervous he was. I was listening to Mike back on Trash Talk in those days, which is very, very sad to admit. And you heard him. You heard
right
there
with you. Yeah.
You're one of us. Yeah, you knew he knew comedy, but you never actually heard him try anything. So I was definitely impressed with the jokes. He obviously, like you said, made Kirk laugh. The thing that I'm going back and forth on is if I'm more impressed with the stand-up now after hearing him in Saco, or if I'm just more frustrated at the lack of preparation he put into Saco, because we know he has this in him.
Right.
But yeah, it was fun. It was he definitely rose to the occasion at the time. And I did like Kingpin Pete kind of chirping him for or Kirk saying, "Oh, he is actually that blind," and then Kingpin Pete as kind of the heckler too.
Yeah. He can't find the microphone, and you can hear, like you said, you can hear how nervous he is. He is breathing into the microphone. You can almost feel him shaking. He's that nervous, and I remember seeing it. I don't know if the Instagram, when they had started doing that, but I remember seeing that video and how nervous he really was. So that was good. And I don't know for VD, I don't think you were into the show at that point when it first came out, right? Like you came in later on.
Right.
When did you first listen to this? And what were you thinking on the re-listen?
I first would have listened right around the end of September, and but I pretty quickly caught up on everything. That's just kind of how it goes with the Kirk Minihane show. But strangely enough, I've been listening to Blind Mike since the Dirty Mike and the Boys days. So I was familiar with him, but not Kirk. I'm kidding.
The Dirty Mike and the Boys days?
Yeah. No, I'm kidding. I wasn't one of those lucky people at Westfield State. Yeah.
Damn, I thought you were an owl. That's too bad.
Yeah, I agree with Ziggy where kind of listening back after Saco was interesting with the whole stand-up debacle because it wasn't terrible. I mean, he came out flat with the projector joke. I did not really understand
his first joke was good to hear all of you today.
Yeah,
Which no one really picked up.
Yeah, no one even
No.
acknowledged it.
No. And then he came in with the projector joke, which just fell flat, and so I'm kind of on the edge of my seat, like, oh, this is worse than I thought. And then he does kind of recover with some good improv work. It wasn't a 5 minutes, I know I clipped it. It's exactly 2 minutes, so not a ton of material, but it was material, and I kind of agree with Ziggy. It makes me think, like, what could he have done at Sacco?
Well, and so Chris, I know you were at Sacco Saturday night. I don't know if you were there Sunday night.
No, not Sunday.
So you got Saturday just Mike completely bombing. Sunday I thought was even worse.
That's what I've heard.
Do you think Mike can even do this for a Wilbur show? He seems so nervous about this.
This is what I think he needs to do. I think he needs to stay away from the self-deprecating stuff, which is weird, because usually comedians are better at that than shitting on other people. But having all the material from Steve from earlier on in the show, he was really, really, really good at with those jokes. But no, from the beginning, I felt bad. I could feel the awkwardness in the air, and I don't know who talked about the it's good to hear everybody here. Yeah. No one acknowledged it at all. It was crazy. It's like yikes. But no, I felt bad for the kid at first, but then once he started going towards Steve, it was pretty easy. You couldn't fail at that.
Oh, I think low hanging fruit of that.
The formula for Wilbur should be pretty easy. Just make fun of Steve, make fun of the Minifans, specific Minifans, and then make fun of Kirk, because Kirk would like that too.
Absolutely.
I agree. Don't go self-deprecating, because that's just gonna feed into his insecurities.
But it's weird, because you would think that you'd be the best at it, because you have no boundaries on what you could say about yourself. But yeah, he was reluctant to really go too hard on himself with that. But yeah, I mean, stick to shitting on other people and not yourself. Golden.
It's been downhill ever since.
Oh, it really has. And so Kingpin Pete is there, and he's given us to hear his perspective on Mike. And the best thing, I think, or maybe the worst thing for Mike, was that little nugget that he gave us that Mike's mom was hot. Right. Yeah. And so I don't know I can't remember when the Discord began, but it wasn't too long after the Discord started where there was some Mama Geary pictures just flooding into one of the channels there.
Real ones?
Oh, real ones. They found her social media real quick after that episode.
I missed it.
So it was glorious to watch, man. So if nothing else, Kingpin Pete gave us the Mama Geary story that we have now.
Let's give credit where credit's due. We just criticized Mike's stand-up, but he did book that in-studio guest. Very rare that Kirk Minihane has an in-studio guest, and I love Kingpin Pete. I thought he was hilarious on that episode. So
what was the jail food he was talking about? I forget what it's
Mofongo.
Mofongo. Still waiting to hear how that is. I thought he was going to make some for Kirk. I want to hear about it.
He had some great one-liners where he's just like, "Oh, Kirk, I think you'd love it in jail." The smartest guy in the room, kind of there's no Google, so everyone just asks him. You can kind of just control people, and that just did give me a funny image of Kirk in some jail, just having this cult of prisoners, going at each other. But
and then Kirk soon after that just is shitting on him how stupid Pete is, So this stranger walks in who's probably, I think they were talking about how jacked he was when he was coming in. This dude is just sitting down there who's done time, who's selling drugs and doing this. A nice guy, but he's just sitting there, and Kirk's there's just a little guy talking into a microphone, just talking shit. Kingpin Pete is an awesome image.
And he walked into a very uncomfortable room.
Oh my god! Yeah,
and he made it through that. So credit,
because it was during the Kirk and Steve fight, and you could hear the bell ringing. And they're like, "Who is that?" He's like, "Kingpin Pete trying to come in." He's like, "Fucking hold on!"
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite bit characters. I wish he's called in 2 or 3 times, but his calls are so funny because he's like a newborn baby where he just he knows no pop culture, and that's all Kirk is. So it just the back and forth is pretty funny. I do think Kingpin Pete of all people highlights how good of an interviewer Kirk is, because he can take. I think most of us or all of us have listened enough about me, but he could take the most uninteresting people and just ask them questions and really focus on one area to really extract some interesting tidbits. And that's what you saw the Kingpin Pete I think it was just a microcosm of how good of an interviewer he is, which is something they've gotten away from They often, I don't know if it's a Steve booking thing, but they're often looking for guests that are combative. But I think if you have someone interesting, Kirk's gonna make it even more interesting.
Yeah, and I know Kirk likes to have that disagreement. And he likes to have argument, but Kirk gets a lot of stuff out of people that they just have an agreement with. Like, it doesn't have to be combative for Kirk to have a good interview with somebody, and he's pulling that out of Kingpin Pete. And I think probably the best thing for me was when that was going on and Kirk is asking him questions. Kirk asks him a question about a jailhouse mentor. And then like 5 minutes later, Steve is so rattled he wasn't even listening, and then he asks him pretty much the same question. That was just, and then you could just reset the whole thing about how Steve's, whole uncomfortableness. It was great.
Big Steve did have a good one-liner when he was talking to Kingpin Pete. He's like, "Oh, like who dimed you out?" Just hearing it, who dimed you out? Like trying to be hip. Like
I got the lingo down. I'm good,
yeah.
Pete. We're good, man.
Russian robot.
And then also, like, I don't know if you picked up on this, but there's one point where Kingpin Pete is talking about how he's pretty open with like his experience of being incarcerated, and Steve's like, "Oh, you didn't wipe that from your social media?" Just kind of had this like disgust in his voice. And Kirk's like, "No, like I think it's good. You got to own it." It's just a little bit of high horse Steve.
Steve was probably so disgusted just having that guy in there.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Do we think Steve brought his piece to work that day? Yeah.
He absolutely did.
Yeah, this criminal in here.
Yeah.
By the way, dimed him out. I'm pretty sure was mentioned 3 times in Kennedy Babylon Volume 2. I think that's where he picked that.
Lingo. No coincidence.
That lingo. Yeah.
Yeah. Howie Carr's a great writer. Fantastic.
Yep.
All right, so we got the after show here.
Fuck you, Red.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Love you, John. VD, can you do me a favor? We're going to talk about the RSS feed and how much we love it. And Dave Cullinane mentioned how much the Minifans talk about the RSS feed today, which I loved because I'm a Cullinane guy. But if you could do me a favor, could you read off the Big Steve 207, his Twitter bio for me, if you could, please?
Yeah, all I'm seeing is a KirkMinihaneshow.com.
KirkMinihaneshow.com. Okay, well, that's interesting. So I come to you not stirring up shit. I am not a troublemaker. That's not what I am. I'm just here bringing information. That's all that I'm doing. I'm not lying. I'm just giving you information. Don't shoot the messenger. All that I'm saying is good for Barstool, for we're in week 2 of this, for not only standing by Kirk and supporting Kirk, but also standing by Steve and Blind Mike and paying them throughout this, which will be a long layoff. So I'm just saying that's great loyalty by a company that's going through not only a global pandemic that we've seen, but also some financial crisis that we've seen. That's really good for them to show that loyalty. I'm excited about that. What I would wish for is maybe possibly, we don't have to hear about the KirkMinihaneshow.com website and different things. Maybe possibly put Barstool Sports back in the bio because they're happy to pay you $100,000 for what you're doing right now, which is, I haven't seen very much of Steve. I'm sure he's working very hard. But what all I'm saying is it's good for Barstool. Thank you for that. I appreciate you for doing that, for being loyal. Hopefully they won't be called out again for any other disloyalty, K Marco aside. So with the RSS feed, speaking of Barstool, what's the future? What's going on? What are we going to do now with Kirk and Steve, with Kirk gone and Steve and Mike covering things and doing it once a week? What's going to happen with this show going forward? What's the next step? What are we going to do, VD? The loyalty of Barstool.
I mean, as far as getting through this hiatus, I think, I have some takes. I want more content, the merrier.
Okay.
I understand it's not going to be as good, but
do you as a Steve guy, let me rephrase this. As a Steve guy, a Steve defender, should I be bothered by this, that Steve still has this in his bio and is pushing this newsletter and doing these different things?
I mean, if you look at Kirk's bio, he's got it in there. He's got no mention of Barstool. Blind Mike's got no mention of Barstool. Are we
just going subscription service regardless of what happens?
I do think so. I don't know if I had to save that for my
okay.
I don't know if I got to sit on those. I don't know if I got to sit on those takes.
Check in tomorrow. Check in
tomorrow. And you'll get those flaming takes about the future of the show, in my opinion.
Because I think we've done this. We've talked about this. We've talked subscription service. I know I'm not in favor of it. I love everything Barstool. Chris, I haven't heard your take on this. The loyalty, I know you seem like not only a Kirk listener from the EEI days, but you seem like a Barstool guy.
Actually, I didn't listen to Barstool at all until Kirk came there. A little bit of KFC when Kirk had gone on KFC before he came. Actually, no, it was when he was going to radio.com and he was doing his little tour. He went on KFC, and that was the first time I ever listened to KFC. I really didn't know shit about Barstool at all. But to be honest, when we talk about subscription service, I am so fucking sick of talking about it after being on Discord because for I don't know, the last 3 months or whatever it's been, that's all it was in all the chats, and everyone's just talking about subscription service. I think that either way, I'll be a listener. I followed Kirk from EEI, and I will follow him wherever he goes next. Barstool is not much to me at all. I know a lot of people have been big Barstool fans, and they think that'll be better with them because of this, and that. But honestly, I'll follow him wherever he goes. If I have to pay for it, I'll pay for it. I'm a huge Kirk guy. I've been always have been, and I'm in favor of whatever. As long as I'm getting content, I do not care.
No, same here. I either way, I'll support it. Just I don't know, something about that just rubbed me the wrong way with everything going on, dude. Like we're 2 weeks in.
I see your point. I understand completely. But I think they're just trying to just get a kickstart on it because eventually it's going to happen. I think it's inevitable now.
But if I'm Portnoy, this is what I did. I put this suggestion out there, and Big Cat didn't play with it. He didn't retweet it. He didn't respond to it. So I'm assuming I'm probably shadow banned by Big Cat as well. Who knows? My suggestion would be, because Portnoy hates Steve so much as some of us do, you could just have Steve come to New York City. It's been a big week for them. They've got new interns there. Just have Steve come to New York City and do a couple of days there in NYC and train some interns. How good would that be for content to have Steve, training some 20-year-olds on how to do something? He would hate it. We would love it. This would be great, VD. What's the downside to putting Steve to work a little bit in New York? Does he only have to do Kirk Minihane show stuff? Because he's under Barstool's contract, he's under their umbrella. Let's get Steve doing some stuff.
We don't know what his contract looks like, to be fair.
Yeah, that's true. I think even if
he's getting paid by Barstool is what I'm saying.
But you don't know what the contract looks like. So
I still think, regardless of the contract, Portnoy would rather pay him and have him be nowhere near him than pay him and be in the office.
This is the thing. Portnoy's not in New York City. This is the best part, is Portnoy's not there. Steve's got to come in and do some work in the Barstool offices. Like, Steve would hate that. Portnoy knows that. Like, this could be great.
Is Steve paid by Barstool or is he paid by Kirk? Because I've heard both. I've heard that from some people that he's paid by Kirk, and I've heard from some people that he's paid by Barstool.
It's way out of my pay grade. But I think it's like a partial, ad rev, whole, bunch of business words. We'd have to probably talk to Cullinane to get it inside.
We'd have to talk to William Benditson, the contract lawyer. But no, I'm sure Barstool cuts the check. But how I have always assumed is Kirk has kind of a budget a pot of money basically and Steve's is coming from Kirk's. So it was Kirk's decision on how much to pay him, and there was some negotiation there. Right. I think Steve could always, if you really want to talk about this, Red, I don't know why you do, but if Steve had to, I'm sure he has vacation days saved up because he hasn't taken much, so he could always just use those and work on the subscription service in the meantime.
He took 3 weeks off.
That's true. But that was over a year. That was over a year ago. So
to be fair, this is also I think probably a scheduled vacation time in August anyway. So I think this is probably going to be off time anyway. So
Steve's a big picture guy. Everyone's kind of focused on the small picture right now. So I have faith in my guy. He's got a lot planned. Stay tuned.
Yeah. Well, I mean, his 11 minutes on the podcast earlier this week was riveting. I know. Again, Turtle Boy and Ziggy were dying for it. They were clamoring for it, and we got it. So,
Red,
what it is. Yes.
Don't try to put words in my mouth. You're not smart.
Look, I was just referencing, just going back. I was just going back to that. I need to go back to the well.
So just to go a little further, if I'm taking Turtle Boy's side, that means you're taking Blind Mike's side.
How's that?
Oh, because you said that because Blind Mike was the one that was going against Turtle Boy.
No, but here's the deal, Mike. And this is, thank you for jogging my memory. Mike was building a straw man argument on Twitter.
Yes,
with him complaining or saying that people are not asking for him to do a watered down Kirk Minihane show. That's not what people are asking for. What people are asking for is, and I'm sure probably Kirk is asking for the same thing, is probably a little bit more hustle into what he's doing. So when you go on, for instance, Go for Gary, and within the first 10 seconds you're saying you don't have anything to talk about, and then within the first 3 minutes you're saying, well, we're probably going to have to cut this short. Last time I checked, executive producer of Vigilance Dave, your former boy, Menners, would give you at least a little bit more than that, and Menners isn't getting paid to do that other than whatever he's getting from that podcast service that he's doing on the side.
I hear you. I agree, but like Mike's the only person that could lose a straw man argument, and he's pulling that off right now on Twitter.
Well, it was as detailed as his Nick Cannon defense or whatever he was doing with cancel culture. So I'm not with Blind Mike on this, Ziggy, because there's no way to get with Mike on this. What I'm telling you is that I think you and Turtle Boy and Big Cat were right. I think this was really great today to have Big Cat and Mike doing that thing today.
So Mike, to clarify, Mike made 2 straw man arguments. So the first one, he said, people keep saying, why don't me and Steve why don't we give our opinions on mental health? Absolutely no one said that. But that's what Mike claimed on Go for Gary. And then I think it was with Big Cat today. He said, people think me and Steve should do an hour show a day. But he was just using Turtle Boy as an example. All Turtle Boy wanted was for the Kirk Minihane show RSS feed to pump Turtle Boy so that when he's begging Clay Travis for a follow, he doesn't look as bad because his website gets more clicks.
Simping for
in the words of Jerry Callahan, Turtle Boy hates fun. So I agree. I agree with everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll give you that, Ziggy. I can't put you in lockstep with Turtle Boy on that one, man. That is a tough look. I mean, as somebody who listens to the Callahan podcast and the Kirk Minihane show,
and someone who's had Turtle Boy on the rundown,
and I've had Turtle Boy on the rundown. Thank you. Yeah, like that's somehow my fault.
And you guilty.
Well, what I can tell you is that there's those 2 shows do enough glossing and ball washing for Turtle Boy as I've ever heard, especially Callahan, man. He resets it every 5 minutes. He tells you to go to Turtle Boy's blog, which there's no chance I'm doing that, man. I would rather go to Pornhub, X videos, and everything.
That was not a good example that you just said you'd rather go to a good website opposed to a bad website.
I'm saying I'd rather go to. I was going to list a bunch of porn websites, Ziggy, until you interrupted me. I was going off, King. Okay, so if you just let me go, I would have gone off. But now we ruined the moment. All right. I think that's probably it. Is there anything else for this after show, or are we good?
On that note, no.
Okay. All right, John.
See you tomorrow.
I'm good.
Right,
thanks,
good.
Ray.
All right, boys. Thank you.
Well said.
Done.
Sorry, I stepped on your joke there, Red. That was my bad.